Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you all here, and we're excited to meet first time as a joint group of travel, recreation, wildlife, cultural resources folks. And between Madam Chairwoman Newsom and I, we're going to try and get through this as quickly as we can. So if you could keep your testimony fairly short, give us the high-level view, just a few minutes on each topic, that would be great. And then just to add a little something else to your homework, folks, we would have a topic preference in here, and we'd like you to put down your top 5 topics that you think we should spend our time on. And then if you would if you're a House member, turn that into Representative Newsom, and Senate members turn that into me. And when would you like that in? Tomorrow? Tomorrow? By tomorrow? Yeah. As a teacher, I'd say tomorrow if you want an A. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We're just going to go in order of the topics on the sheet. Is that good with you? Yeah. Okay. So we'll start off with our first proposed interim topic, review of state parks planning process. Senator Case here? Oh, I guess it'll be our director, Director Westby. Welcome.
Madam Chairwoman, Committee, great to see you in a big space. I remember our interim committee hearings before were in a very tight closet, it felt like. So it's nice to have the elbow room. So Darren Westby, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources. Obviously, Senator Case brought this forward. All I would say, and I think there's one down the way as well that talks about our planning process. I 100% wholeheartedly welcome the opportunity to showcase what our agency does on a planning process. Not only our process, but every step that we go through to try to engage the public, engage the locals, engage environmental groups, and engage wildlife groups, whatever you want to call it. I welcome the opportunity to bring to this committee what we do, why we do it, and why we've been successful in the past and going into the future. So I'd stand for any questions.
Questions? Chairwoman.
So on page 8, Representative Winter has a similar request. So we might ask Representative Winter what he foresees in that request.
Madam Co-Chair, yeah, that would be along the same lines as the first one.
Representative Winter, do you have anything to add to that, to your request for an interim topic on page 8?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to have to refresh my memory here a little, I guess.
Madam Chairwoman, while he's reading that, I think this was an interim topic by an individual through Representative Winter. And this involves the Sinks Canyon State Park. And again, I would love to showcase my staff and the amount of work they put in for that master planning process, dovetail in all the efforts that we do. I know it talks about standardizing the planning process. I can bring to you exactly what our planning process is, and I think you would all agree that the existing planning process is significantly detailed and oriented to ensure that we get the most public input. Now, let's be honest, sometimes your input it's taken, but we may not go that direction, and that may cause some issues personally. And so I welcome to bring my committee, my team in front of you and let them showcase what they do and what they try to do. I have a proud team. I'm proud of my team. We have a great group. We work hard significantly to ensure that the state of Wyoming is represented well. So thank you.
Questions for the director? Hey, Director, before you leave, stay here. We just may as well hit you up while we're here for a couple of other ones, but I do have a question just on the planning part. I see on one that it's estimated 2 hours, and on the other one it says 20 hours. Is that a typo, do you suppose? I suppose it is.
Um,
The topic on page 8.
Madam Chairwoman, I would hope that it was a typo of 20 hours.
Okay.
2 hours would be probably way more than enough to showcase what we do. And if there's any directive, obviously we'll take improvement. I mean, we're 100% always looking to improve our process, and we do after every planning process. We sit down and how do we do it better? How can we do it better? And so definitely we'll take feedback and try to improve to ensure that we're doing all that you would be proud of.
Also, Director, page 3, you've got a proposed interim topic, general agency update and reporting. We may as well talk about that. And also, I think on page 4, you've got some topics on the State Museum and also Hot Springs State Park. So we may as well just, if you're all right with that, we'll hit them all.
Madam Chairwoman, I'll try to go through. This isn't the order in which I have it, so I'll try to make sure I hit the topics that you want to hit. If I miss something, please stop me and bring me back. The shooting complex, we will be putting an individual towards the shooting complex task force. And so that'll obviously be a reporting coming down. That's middle of the page on page 3. On bottom of page 3 is just general agency updating and reporting. Per statute, we have several things that we're required to bring to your attention, whether it's fees, whether it's visitation, all those things that are statutorily. And usually we try to cover that in our agency updates, and almost every time we get in front of you, we get a little bit of time just to give those updates, and you guys can ask questions and make sure that we're going down the right path. The next topic on page 4, which I think between that and the cultural and arts discussion, I think are our two biggest pushes for this interim study. The State Museum currently is going through a level 1, level 2 study that you all funded last year to ensure that we're going through the necessary planning steps to see what would be most beneficial, an expansion of our State Museum or a whole brand new building. And so we have consultants on board, and they're studying that right now and developing potential concepts as well as cost estimates and all that going forward. So this will be kind of an update, and if there's anything moving out of that level 1, level 2 that you may or may not want to grab onto, we can then take that forward to the State Building Commission and put it on our building facility plan assessment going forward, and possibly go forward with the capital construction. So our intent is to have that level 1, level 2 study done early summer, so we have the opportunity to get in front of you all as well as the State Building Commission. Excuse me. The Hot Springs State Park concession RFP update. As you're well aware, we've been trying over the course of, well, it seemed 20 years since I've been working there to try to improve Hot Springs State Park. We have some movement. We have an RFP drafted and ready to go on the street in hopes that we can find some concessionaire that can take over and run a majority of the facilities up there to try to, again, make Hot Springs State Park the crown jewel that it can be within not only our system, our state park system, but as a tourism entity in and of itself. It has definitely the possibility and the bones to be really that destination spot in the center of the state that will help not only bring visitors here, but slow them down as they're traveling through. So hopefully, as the RFP goes through its process, we might be bringing not only an update on the RFP, but if the proposals come back from the individuals that talk about their investment and request that the state put skin in the game as well, there may be a request as well to help facilitate that RFP process, not the RFP process, but the contractual process after the successful RFP is awarded. I think the next one that I have, Madam Chairwoman, is at the bottom of page 5, rolling on to page 6, is the cultural resource funding. This is the one where that might be with Andrew, but, and I can let him talk about that. I know I have one on there, Madam Chairwoman. And I apologize that they might be a little bit disjointed because I wanted to spread the love between the two chairs. And so I gave some to Chairwoman Schuler and some to Madam Chairwoman Newsom. And so mine on the cultural resource and art funding is on page 11, bottom of page 11. And what I want to do is just bring forward a conversation or have a conversation with you all to discuss the importance of art and culture within our state, what it brings as not only as a citizen, the community livability piece, but also it can be a tourist destination. I mean, some of you live in some very culturally desirable destination spots within the state. And so I want to make sure that we can voice the importance, the return on investment of not only the general fund, but the federal funds that we get in hopes that over the last 10 years, the arts have been reduced. Not that the rest of our agency hasn't, but the arts got hit as well. And our hope is that we can showcase what art and culture importance is within our state, that we can get some discussion rolling on potentially getting a general fund increase to our budget to push the funding one-to-one match that we get from the federal government, from the National Endowment of the Arts. So, and with that, I guess, Andrew, if you had.
Welcome, Mr.
And
Schneider.
Madam Chairman, I didn't mean to
Absolutely.
take over.
No, I think that'd give you a little break here. So we'll hear from Mr. Schneider. What can you
So,
tell us?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. My name's Andrew Schneider. I'm with the Wyoming Arts Alliance. We're a 40-year-old arts service organization. First of all, just want to share that we support all of the cultural resources topics that Darren and the agencies have brought forward. So as you're going through those, know that WIA is happy to participate in those topics and supports you looking at cultural resources. Here in this topic, we're simply asking you to begin considering how best to meet the needs of the Wyoming Arts Council and the lag in funding there. And we're offering a couple ways and means to do that, but there may be other ways that would work as well or better as this way. But that is a conversation that we're asking to have. And just to underline briefly, a couple of points Darren brought up. In recent years, the Alliance has been working out in the field and with our state agencies, the Executive Office and legislators, to do needs-based assessments and to come up with corresponding new ideas. And so, we're really trying to solve for problems using arts to solve problems like how do we preserve and expand the cultural quality of life that encourages Wyoming's young people and families to stay here and to come back. And how do we do that in a way that contributes to the economic resilience of all of our communities? And the point of tourism is a great one. I think that the governor gave a great State of the Arts speech Friday, which highlighted that tourism is a driver of bringing people to Wyoming, and where cultural amenities and resources have been developed, visitors stay longer and spend more. So we have the data, the proof of concept to show that. And now is the time to put gas in that tank so that we can really think about how we're distributing responsible use of our visitors around the state and giving them both that great backcountry experience, but also an authentic small town Wyoming cultural experience when they get into their rooms and lodging at night. So with that, I'll happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Schneider from anyone? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Want to
you,
continue on there, Director? Do you want to switch on
Um,
over to page
Madam-
7, or is there a specific,
Madam
another
Chairman,
area?
I'm on a roll.
Okay.
I think I can take you back to page 7 now, if that works. That
Perfect.
is the Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund governance. So that bill just passed third reading, slightly amended. And so the governance piece and the actual makeup of how we're going to spend this money will need to be discussed in the interim, so we can craft that language going forward and how we're going to stand up the actual disseminating of the grants to the communities. And so appreciate you putting that on the topic. And it's been a long time coming to get that bill to where it's at, so I really appreciate the effort. Madam Chairman, the next one on the list, mid-page 7, is Monuments and Markers Program. Again, just want to discuss the importance of the Monuments and Markers Program within the state. I know it was mentioned there was 200. I think we're close to 2,000 monuments and markers within the state. And so from a perspective of maintaining them from a high level of brand management that we like to maintain in our agency, it's getting more difficult to make that happen. So I think what we'll be bringing forward is some discussion and then probably a exception request going forward with the governor's budget. The next one at the bottom is Director Schober's, but I had one later. I'm seeing on page 12, so I don't know if Diane, if you want to join me on this one. It's the film industry, growth of the film industry. And as we listen to the film bill debate, Diane and I had the opportunity to discuss how do we move this forward? The importance of the industry in the state, whether it's us bringing individuals into film, movies, TV, commercials, is one piece of the pie. It's a decent sized piece from a financial perspective, but people that are interested in coming here to do this type of work always ask, do you have the workforce? Do you have the industry stood up? Are there editing booths? Are there people that know how to run a mic, a boom stand? Are there people that know how to do that type of work? And Representative Storer, I mean, I know you have a heck of a lot, and I'm already tripping over myself on the actual work that's out there, but we want to bring forward the opportunities that Office of Tourism, Wyoming Arts Council, community colleges, the University of Wyoming can all work together to grow this industry potentially, and then work towards the growth of the industry, and then work towards potentially what it's going to take to start bringing some of these people into the agency. And so with that, I turn it over to Director Schober if she has more to add.
Director Schober, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Diane Schober, Wyoming Office of Tourism. That Director Westby summed this up fairly well. This topic has been before you, but we've had it as a pretty narrowed conversation around a film production rebate. And really, as we have worked with the industry that's here in Wyoming and conversations with our colleagues through the community colleges, Dr. Caldwell, and the programs that are at several of those colleges, as well as vocational programs at Wyoming high schools, with the encouragement of Director Westby, just how do we broaden this? It's really more about an industry and economic development in a way that transcends just one film production rebate. That could be a result of trying to grow and expand this industry, but we really wanted to look at this in a much broader sense. There also is a great deal of opportunity in like manufacturing media around industry and trade. And businesses today, we're in the storytelling business. Obviously, we do it from the tourism standpoint, telling stories about Wyoming and our people. But that really is a way that products and or services are moved through the private sector, is through these video and production kinds of storytelling. We believe that there is great opportunity here, and we've had, I think, success to a great extent with this, but there is opportunity from where we sit and working with the industry to broaden that conversation. So I would stand for any questions if you have them.
Questions for Director Schober? Gosh, they're awfully quiet. I don't know. Is the house go into a coma over there? Oh, there is one. Okay. Representative Storer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director Schober, I'm just curious how Wyoming compares to similar states. Montana, Idaho might be good examples of where we would want to compare ourselves.
Director?
Madam Chairman and Representative Storer, I don't have the specifics in front of me, but we do have a comparative matrix. We had used it as a handout at one of our committee meetings. It's difficult to compare state to state because we're not apples to apples. Tax structures are very different. Workforce is very different in these communities. But what we can bring to you is the volume of activity that these other states are enjoying and the economic impact that is derived from that volume of activity. And so be happy to, if you advance this forward, to share that with you. I know even during this session, when you were considering the film production rebate, that there was testimony from others outside in the industry who shared with you productions that were happening in Canada, in Montana, New Mexico, that were Wyoming-based themed storylines that were not filmed in Wyoming because of the lack of an incentive and a rebate program. So we can get that information for you. I'm just sorry I don't have it for you directly today.
Any other questions for Director Schober? Okay, thank you so much, Director. Appreciate it. Back to you,
Thank
Director
you,
Westby.
Diane. Chairwoman Schuler, thank you. On page 12, I think, is my next one, and that's State Park and Historic Site Property Acquisition Removal. Over the course of the last couple of years, we've been working with landowners that are interested in potentially taking their property and turning it into a state park or historic site. We're doing some, what we call site criteria. It's in our statutes that we have to do due diligence on what does the property look like? What does it look like as a state park? How much is it going to cost from a contract construction perspective? What is the ongoing costs, staffing, and all that kind of stuff? So we have one for sure that possibly will come to this body, but there's several others that are in discussion right now. And so I like to have the placeholder that if possibly the third quarter meeting or the latter meeting that we have an opportunity, if we need to bring it forward to you, if my commission says yes, please go forward and make this to the TRWCR committee, do so. And then if we go forward with that route, it gives you the opportunity to create legislation and approve going forward. So. And the last but definitely not least on the list, I believe that pertain to my agency, is America's 250th commemoration. It's something that we haven't heard a whole lot about, and I'm kind of shocked. I know I was not that young, but not that old in 1976, and so I slightly remember it. I have staff that are completely geeking out about it and are really excited for the 250th commemoration or celebration. And so I just want to put it on your radar, and whether it comes out of this body or whether it comes out of management or if it comes out of the governor's office, that we need to start thinking about it. It's in 2026, so that's right around the corner. And if we're going to make a big stand on what our country means to our state, now is a good time to start thinking about that, whether it be a commission, start thinking about large projects, start thinking about ways that our great-great-grandkids can look back and see what we did on the 250th year of our country. And so with that, Madam Chairwoman and committee, I would stand for any questions or get out of the seat and let somebody else take your time.
Questions for Director Westby? No? Yes, go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Director Westby. I just had a question. What is the one property that is being considered to become a state park right now that you were talking about?
Go ahead, Director.
Chairwoman Schuler, right now the property that has gone through the site criteria process and we were just getting the report back is Gray Rocks right outside of Wheatland. And so it's a property that is owned by the power plant there in perpetuity for recreation. And the Game and Fish does some management there. I think the county does some management there as well. They're looking for some resource protection and management as if what we do at our state parks. We manage them very well. We understand the role between recreation and true resource protection, and how we marry those together to ensure that people get to enjoy their time at our state parks, but still respect and recreate how we want them to recreate.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add, we've been looking, this has been a topic for the TRW committee for a while, so this isn't a new thing, but for the new members of the committee, we'll get you up to speed.
Any other questions for the Director? Oh, go ahead, Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Since evidently this one topic here, it was given to me and I didn't realize that I had this. But so I just need to, it's talking about the state parks, and this is certainly the time to do it. And it appears that the person writing this has some concerns about them not knowing what the state parks is doing relative to some of these state parks in the state. So I just would express my willingness to help them, however, to resolve this if there is a problem. And I've had really the opportunity, good opportunity to work with the state parks personnel and especially with the Hot Springs State Park. And that's just developed into a good relationship, and I appreciate them so much. And I would certainly do whatever I can to help them on these other topics relative to the state parks. So, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Before we turn to Director Westby-Luz? Oh, good. You did a great job.
Yeah.
That's a lot of things, a lot of
Thank you.
topics
Yeah,
there. So,
well, we're excited. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and turn it over to Game and Fish right now and let them get some of their topics ahead before we turn it over to the public? Welcome, Director.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Brian Nesvik, Director of Wyoming Game and Fish. So we actually had a pretty short list, Madam Chair, of topics that we submitted, but I did hear from legislators and other groups prior to this meeting that there would probably be some other recommended topics. I see them here on the list that are relative to game and fish. So I'll talk about the stuff that we submitted and then certainly be available here for any questions or any additional input that might be required of the committee regarding some of these other topics on the list. So first of all, I can tell you that we submitted, in the event that it did not pass, the shooting complex topic. And so I think we're at a point where we probably do not need to see that as an interim topic, because the statute that will likely be signed will set up and establish this task force. So the other two topics that we submitted.
Excuse me, could we break in here for questions, Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Nesvik, kind of coupled with the shooting complex, though, is the discussion of Hunter Ed. And I remember years ago, our current Senate president worked very closely with Superintendent Balo, and they, had a really nice effort to, try and support Hunter Ed in public schools. I'm curious to know if that went far enough, or if there's a way or an opportunity or even a desire from your agency to maybe take a closer look. I don't know how many school districts out there actually have some Hunter Ed. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I didn't want to walk away from that topic entirely.
Director?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Ellis. So thank you for bringing that up. That's actually something that we obviously supported, and we've made some pretty significant efforts to try to expand the capacity across the state to have Hunter Ed in schools. Superintendent Balo and I were working on that at a much broader scale statewide, and COVID came and it kind of went away. And Superintendent Degenfelder and I have a meeting established. It's set up sometime in March, I don't remember when, to put a little bit more juice back in this topic and see where the new superintendent is on this. There's a resolution that's been passed by the legislature that asks me or the director of the Game and Fish and the superintendent, whoever they may be, to promote and to expand the capacity of hunter education across the state. It's still a high priority for us. I have a communications director that's chomping at the bit to go out and make this happen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that might be something worth at least having an update, one of our meetings on, just to see how that's going forward. So great, go ahead.
And Madam Chair, that leads me to one thing that I did not submit that's always been on the agenda, and that's just agency updates, a spot for me at each meeting to update this committee on important topics. And I guess I didn't think I needed to submit that, but please know that we have some smaller items that we didn't submit, so we could use that particular agenda item to bring those to your attention. We did submit an update and some more information regarding kind of a moving target right now with aquatic invasive species. This committee has continually been extremely supportive, going back all the way to 2010. The legislature's been very supportive of that program. It's been successful to this point, but we continue to have things that change with discovery of new infested waters closer and closer to our borders that are putting us in a position to have to change the way that we protect our state. So I think it would be important for us to update you. A lot of this probably be informational, but as rapidly as this changes, I'm not so sure there wouldn't be a need to have some discussions about potential bill drafts and additional language that we may need to help with this. I'll stop there in case there's questions on
Questions
aquatic invasive
Director?
species.
Nesbitt, in terms of the aquatic species? No? Okay, continue.
And then I think certainly not least, but last on our list, page 2, Representative Newsom is the sponsor on this one, was this whole issue that this committee, Senator Ellis, I'm sure remembers this well. Many of the rest of the members that have been here for a while remember the whole issue with commercial fishing guides and on some of our busiest waters, concerns from Wyoming citizens about overcrowding, lack of or lower quality experience relative to fishing because of commercial activity, especially during times when certain waters are unfishable because they're really high and muddy, and all the commercial focus goes to other waters. And so we certainly heard the same kind of complaints that many legislators that have been bringing this in front of the legislature for many years now have heard. We did have, just to refresh some of your memories here, 2 or 3 years ago, we had this topic during the interim and had some testimony from other states. And ultimately, the legislature decided not to pass that legislation. There's been additional study on it, and there were 2 or 3 bills that were either introduced or contemplated this session. So we certainly, well, we don't have the answer, and we have real concerns with what potential impacts there may be on our agency relative to regulating or administering any kind of a program with regards to commercial fishing activity, commercial boat use. We did feel it's a big enough topic that we felt like we should recommend it to this committee to consider, at least for interim study. And with that, Madam Chair, that's the list that we submitted.
Questions, Co-Chairman?
On your narrative of the commercial fishing guides, on page 2, it says that you would offer to develop a tour. We will be meeting in Casper for our first meeting. Would that be a good time to do that tour?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and refresh my memory on the date. Is it
Like
April or May?
13 of June.
Of June, yeah, absolutely. That would be a great time to do a tour.
Okay, perfect. Also, has anyone talked to you at all about the issues with fish being, tossed into our rivers and streams that are not native? Have you had any pushback from anyone lately? I just had a question, actually, as I was coming down the hall, with someone asked me about that, and I haven't heard, so.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we haven't necessarily had issues with fish that are not already existing in our state, like species from other states that have been brought into Wyoming and dumped into a lake or a river. We have had significant issues with fish that are in our state in one body of water that are then, with a bucket, moved to another body of water, and that's a significant impact on fisheries. We've had 2 very, very expensive illegal fish translocations, one at Buffalo Bill Reservoir. That's not a walleye fishery, it's a trout fishery, and walleye were introduced there probably about 12 years ago, 15 years ago now. And now we expend a lot of resources every year to try to control the walleye population. They're essentially the wolf of the water for a trout. And the other place that we just recently had to do a large scale treatment was at Saratoga Lake, where yellow perch were introduced. And we had to kill the whole lake in order to get rid of the perch. If the perch were to make it into the Platte River system, it'd be catastrophic to the trout population. So it is an issue in our state. It is illegal to move fish around the state to transport a live fish, but it's very difficult to enforce. And it only takes just a couple of folks that have bad intentions to go and create some pretty significant impacts.
Other questions for the Director? Nesbitt? Sure. We do have, do you want to go ahead and do that now? Senator, go ahead.
So on page 1, we have Chairman Burkhart's request, and Mr. Magagna, if you would want to come up and speak to the elk population management and control. request?
Welcome, Mr. Magagna. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Madam Chairs. Jim McGaggan with Wyoming Stock Growers Association, also representing the Wyoming Wool Growers Association today. And this is an issue we've been working closely with the Game and Fish on, but in certain areas of the state and an increasing number of areas, elk populations have grown to far exceed the management goals that the Game and Fish Department themselves have for that elk population. It's having an impact in some cases on habitat for deer that we're aware of, and it certainly is having an impact on ranchers in terms of grazing their livestock, both on their private land and on federal land, and particularly on the private land. Particular owner situation is just here north and west of Cheyenne, where private landowners had to significantly reduce their livestock herds simply because of the forage being consumed by elk populations. And there are a number of factors. The elk have done very well in some areas. Other private landowners don't allow hunting access. And while that certainly is their private property prerogative, that makes it much more difficult for the Game and Fish to manage those herds. So the department has several tools that they currently have. They're starting to use some of those, I believe, more than they have in the past. But what we are suggesting and asking is that you review with the department and with the affected landowners, both the impacts and the tools that are currently available, and determine if more vigorous use of those tools would be the answer, or if some additional statutory authority needs to be granted to the commission and department in order to get this under control. It's kind of, I like to refer to the elk population parts of the state as the wild horses that the state has to deal with, because the excess populations are somewhat proportionate to what the excess horse populations in some areas. And we want to see reasonable tools used to get those down to the appropriate numbers. Certainly to make sure that any elk that are harvested, that meat is properly utilized, not allowed to waste. And I think a thorough discussion of this and an exploration, perhaps some additional alternatives, would be worth the time of this joint committee. With that, Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Magagna? Go ahead, Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Magagna, what additional tools do you envision that Game and Fish does not already have?
Go ahead, Mr.
Madam
Magagna.
Chairman and Representative Western, I don't want to be premature in saying this is the tool they need. They have some tools with giving landowners some additional permits that they can make available to others. One tool might be a little more, would be for cow elk, a little more flexibility in how landowners can utilize those permits in order to make sure that they're fully utilized. They have some authority currently to have a private contractor come in and remove some elk, and maybe some exploration of that. And is there a way that could be structured or restructured so that it would be more viable and more valuable to the department in dealing with this issue? And there may be others out there. I don't want to at this point suggest that there's an entirely new tool that hasn't been explored, but I think that's something that we and the department and the committee could certainly look into.
Other questions? Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chairman.
Magagna. Appreciate it. Is there one more? Oh, page 9. You got page 9 in front of you? Okay. Yeah, the topic, page 9, Game and Fish Commission, non-resident hunting procedures for bighorn sheep and moose. That actually came from Representative Winter. Do you want to talk about that, Representative Winter? And then maybe the director can visit with us.
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. My concern here is if I remember right, the House killed that bill on preference points and bonus points. And it's my concern that this is going to have a big effect on the Game and Fish Department. for future funding. But I think I think there is an answer to this, but we just need to discuss it more and get more input from the Game and Fish Department relative to this problem. It's my understanding that, and it's from my experience, that the preference points and the bonus point systems are not working, and they're not working for the state of Wyoming as well as other states. And we just need to get a different approach to this, I think. And I guess my bottom line is I just have a feeling that we need to go back to random draw. Every time we start playing games with this stuff, it ends up in a mess. So I'd like to get this interim topic into force here and get something accomplished. We've tried to do something with that preference. The task force really worked hard on it, and the preference point and the bonus point, but it just didn't work out. And so I think we need to pursue it further and try to get something accomplished on this.
Director?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Winter, I don't disagree with anything Representative Winter said. I think he characterized this problem well. That, you know, the task force tackled this because when we modeled existing allocation policy against the demographic of folks that have these preference points and against, you know, what the future availability of licenses may or may not be, the system is not going to work in its current form forever. Is it going to be broke and not work tomorrow? No, but it's something that we are going to have to fix at some point in time. As Representative Winter indicated, the task force studied this for many, many hours and worked really hard on this. And so, you know, there is work that's been done, and some of that work, if this was to be taken up by the committee, could be brought into the discussion. We wouldn't be starting from scratch, but we would certainly, from our perspective, welcome the opportunity to have the discussion.
Questions, follow up on that? Yeah, Representative Wester.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director Nesvik, obviously, I'm not going to rehash that whole debate, but I think the one concern, at least in the context of this legislative session, the one component that was left out that I think is a really big deal is the supply side of those tags, right? And, you know, maybe it's worth having a discussion about, you know, what are all the projects that the Game and Fish is involved with that you're either coordinating or partnering with on some of these nonprofits to address that supply side of that concern? Because I agree, I think it works pretty well now. We've got to a point where max points right now, you're guaranteed to draw as long as you're not putting it for 12 or 17 or one of those areas. But I think that whole other half of the equation didn't get a ton of dialogue, then that might be worthwhile.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Western, and we'd be glad to talk about all the stuff that, all the current existing projects, give a current status and update of those populations that are especially bighorn sheep and moose, and some of the challenges, and then some of the places where they're doing really well, why they're doing really well. Because we got both going on at the same time across the state. You know, I think the reason that I say that this system, at least when you model it and project, you know, look down the road, particularly for bighorn sheep, the average age of the person drawing those licenses is increasing every year, and it's now at like 57. And if it continues on, you know, forever like that, pretty soon the only folks that will be able to draw are 70, 80-year-old people who have just lived in Wyoming a long time and been in the system a long time. And sheep hunting is difficult when you're 48, which is when I did it, let alone when you're 75. So I just think that, and the other thing that I'm concerned about, you know, this committee's heard from me on my initiative on Inspire Kid. It's really hard to convince a young person right now to get into the point system because your chances of drawing are so slim under the existing system that it disincentivizes youth from putting in. So that's another reason why I think we need to look at it.
Great. Any other questions for the director? Okay. Also, go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And it looks like public access is on there. And so we could just round out all over game and fish topics if we want, I think.
Yeah, I think we have that listed as an individual topic. So, but we'd love to have you stay and help us answer some questions when they're brought forth.
Yeah, I'll be glad to hang right here.
All right. Who wants to start? Who wants to kick it off?
Madam Chairwoman, Sabrina King, lobbyist for the Wyoming chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And we really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. We have had some conversations about this, and what we have put in front of this committee, frankly, is a relatively broad topic, and I think intentionally so. One of the things that we've seen throughout the session, frankly, and some of the other issues that we've been dealing with is, regardless of what you're talking about, corner crossing comes up. People want to talk about it. People have a lot of questions about public access and a lot of questions about, I think, just the lay of the land, frankly, generally speaking. And I think what we are going for in this topic is not coming to you with sort of prescriptions and sort of the same sort of piecemeal answers for how to address access issues, but really wanting to have a bigger conversation and really wanting to, I think, have a comprehensive conversation about how we address public access in Wyoming. And I think if you look at some of the other proposed interim topics, frankly, some of them are related to this. I mean, if we talk about the shooting complex and wanting to have more hunters in the state of Wyoming and have more people out in the field, more hunters are going to require more access. Access is, we're coming at it, I think, from a sportsman's perspective, but we're also looking at the Recreation Trust Fund and having more people in the state of Wyoming out wanting to access public lands. That access is going to, or that recreation is going to require access. And we were just talking about elk populations, and the burden of managing elk populations shouldn't be on the landowners. I mean, let the hunters hunt. We would be delighted to help. And that will require more access. And so I think what the conversation that we'd like to have and what we put in front of this committee are some specific ideas, but really the request to take a deep dive look at public land access, those sort of isolated parcels that have no access. When we're looking at the corners for corner crossing, I mean, we were talking about thousands of corners and 1,200 landowners, and how do we actually manage that as a state? And I would submit to you that there certainly is a conversation going on in the courts right now about corner crossing, but I think it's up to the state of Wyoming to decide how we want to manage that. So that's our proposal, and I think that's what we put in front of the committee, and we're certainly open to conversation about what exactly that looks like. But it is intentionally broad, and we'd like to have, I think, a pretty comprehensive look at public lands access.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Western.
Madam Chairwoman, well, where to start? Speaking strictly on behalf of myself, access is a huge deal. It's something that's really important to me, and I'm really proud of the stuff that I've done on it. Maybe do a little humble brag and talk about how the miles I've hiked just to get to that one chunk of BLM when you had to go up and down and around, and I feel that pain. And so I certainly appreciate the conversation. I'm not super interested in just repeating the conversation that kind of happens a lot when it comes to access. Most of us know what we're probably going to say and what our major concerns are. I think there is a lot of value, though, in having really specific conversations, or having conversations about really specific components of the access discussion. For example, increasing the schedule for the compensation rates for access. Yes, money talks, right? We know this. Obviously, I've worked on the conservation stamp issue and raising those funds, or perhaps lifting the cap for our wardens to enforce the statutes that we currently have and administering these programs, access technicians, those kind of things. The other one, of course, is a lot of the right-of-ways and access easements that OSLI has sponsored that certainly I'm unaware of, and I'd be worthwhile really seeing what does that look like? What kind of information can we glean from that? So I think having conversations on really specific components within the access debate, I think are really great. But kind of just going at a broad nebulous angle, I'm not sure if it's going to yield any kind of actionable results come next November, December, that we can boil down into a piece of legislation and all support. I will say when it comes to the corner crossing thing, that's huge for me. But I think, and I've had the conversation with Mr. McGagnon, I think let's wait to see what the courts do before we bring any legislation. I think we don't want to put the cart before the horse. I think I like to be proactive, but I think in this situation, it might be a little bit better to be reactive, see how the courts react, what kind of rulings are made, and then go from there with legislation. So, I mean, that's kind of certainly my 2 cents on a really important topic, but one I don't want to burn a bunch of the committee's time going over arguments that, for those of us who've been around a while, we've just kind of seen on repeat for a while.
Okay,
I would offer
ahead.
that while I very much agree, I think the ability to be creative in our approach is something that we haven't really given time. I think I am also sick of talking about the same discussions over and over and over again. I feel like this has been something where we sit in the committee and talk about it a lot, at least in my career here. Looking at where we can find creative approaches, I think also takes having that big, broad discussion and talking about some of the difficult stuff. I look at this, can't agree more with the sort of looking at how even the mapping is, what GIS we have available, and how companies like Onyx can sometimes differ from other places just because of accessibility, and making sure that we have the most up-to-date GIS work where we can. The other part of that, I would say, is looking at where we've seen other states succeed. I think talking about when we look at hunter and landowner conflict, a lot of times it ends up with us on either side of the line, but we can use something like what the previous topic with the elk management, that's a common ground. And we can find those places and sit down and go, okay, how do we do it? Does it mean more accountability on hunters? Like, do we need to start figuring out how hunters can show up and be more accountable? Does that also mean more accountability on the landowner side, and where that give and take is for access as well? And I think there's a willingness to sit here and find compromise that hasn't been there maybe in previous times. And I think there's a willingness for hunters to give a little and get a little. And that broad topic is important so that we can be creative, because I do think there are ideas out there that aren't touched on. There might be other states that are doing things that we have not thought about. Although just because they do it doesn't mean Wyoming should. Maybe there's a Wyoming way and we just haven't figured that out yet. But if we just don't talk about it, we will just keep coming back with the same stuff. And there's only so much that the three of us can do to rein in the rest of the hunting population. And we try our best, but we keep ending up here being told that access needs to be talked about. And so we sit here and say, we're here, we're really willing to work. And I do think that a large amount of time can come up with something new. But it takes time, and I wish it was as easy. I want to come with a whole list. If I ever have that, I promise you I will. But I do very much agree. A lot of what Representative Western listed out, I think, are good places to start.
Did you want to testify? Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Chairwoman Schuler, Josh Menton with the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Really appreciate getting to work alongside my colleagues here on this. And while I agree that we want to have some concrete solutions here, I think that I would echo that having a broad topic to come up with creative solutions is going to be our best bet. On that, I can add that we do have some concrete things that we want to work on. The Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership worked with a bipartisan coalition of organizations and decision makers to pass the Mapland Act, which directs federal agencies to digitize and make publicly available easement data. We just talked a little bit about that earlier and how that could have an application here. I would add that act was co-sponsored by both of our senators. And so that's one example of something that can come out of this. And we want to make sure we bring that in conversation to determine if something like that is needed legislatively, or if there's an administrative way to deal with that. Because we don't want to saddle our agencies with work that they don't need to be doing if we can do it in another way. So I'd add that as one example of an outcome that we could get.
Thank you. Any questions for any of these folks on public access? Or the director, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure, Madam Chair, just very quickly. So I think Representative Western hit on some pretty important points. Number one, I think it would be foolish for the legislature to enact any kind of statute related to corner crossing right now. We may get some clarity from the court, we may not, but doing something before that would be a mistake in my view. I think that I'm not opposed at all to having this discussion and listening to creative ideas, but I'm not sure at the end of the day the solution's legislative. I think I'm not so sure that's the case, but with that, Madam Chair, I think, like I said, Representative Western hit on some pretty important points.
Okay, thank you very much for all your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Also, Director, I'm assuming you probably want to have an update from the Wildlife Trust Fund somewhere within those days. Is that correct? Or would you this year?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would defer to Director Budd, but I can't remember if we've done that in TRW in the interim before.
We have.
Yeah.
Is he here today? Is Mr.
He's
Budd?
not in the room,
He's not,
or he
okay,
wasn't at the
yeah.
beginning, and certainly, talking about those projects is always a good thing, so.
We'll check back with him and also with you on that, but I think that was very valuable for us.
Yeah, for the record, I'm supportive of that being a topic.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
when we did the large project bill on the Senate side, it was a comment made in passing. And so I don't think as I'm sitting here reading this, I didn't submit it as a formal topic, but that was something I think would be really valuable. And then I think we even talked about maybe coordinating meeting dates with their board to one of our TRW meetings. So stay tuned.
And I think Senator Guru had a question also.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, just to go back for a second to page 2 in the commercial fishing. Guys, if we were to take that up, has the commission or your department, do you have enough data to be able to talk about that as far as, it seems to me if we're going to do anything about this, it's going to have to be data driven, not just number of cars in a parking lot or who's fishing and who's fishing hole, which is sometimes a discussion at times I know that kind of devolves to. So I was wondering if just for my own edification.
Director?
Madam Chair, Senator Gru, we do have quite a bit of recent data, specifically fisheries data regarding fish mortality or lack thereof, as well as some use data. We've got quite a bit of that. Our folks have been working on it after this came up 2 or 3 years ago. And so we will be able to provide some of that for the committee's consideration.
That's good. Thank you. Appreciate it, Director. All right. I know the House has to get back fairly quick, but we'll zip through here. I think we have at least a couple of topics on, do you want to go with the active transportation and safe crosswalks, or should we go with the historic horse racing? What do you think, Madam Chair? Let's go with the historic horse racing, and I know there's probably a few folks in the room that would like to testify on this. At least I know one. It's been brought up quite a bit in our side of the hall, so welcome, Mr. Reeman. They don't like it.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Do appreciate your consideration of this topic. The Joint Revenue Committee is also considering apparently this topic as well. The issue is, and it's very similar to what we've had with fair boards and other boards, that county commissioners can establish them but have no power once they're established to dissolve them or do any other regulation. And in fact, in the last couple of weeks, we have a new Supreme Court decision that says we can authorize historic horse racing locations, but we have no authority to then regulate them after that point in time. And that's a problem for a number of reasons, as you can imagine. One of those is even growth of the community, because there are several counties that have just decided if they don't have the power to regulate things, just even the good actors in terms of their time of hours, et cetera, then they're just not going to authorize any locations. So we'd like to work with you to see if we can find a model that's agreeable. We propose this with the support of at least one of the HHR companies in the state. And we've been evaluating the liquor license model as perhaps one to bring forward. And it is my hope that we can collectively bring you the solution rather than having to hash it through with you. But nonetheless, we'd like for you to have this as one of your interim topics. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Reeman? I don't think so. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyone else that would like to testify on that topic at all? All right. Have I missed anything? Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. On page 10, we have the active transportation and safe crosswalks. Is Mr. Kusiak Is he around by chance? Is he online? No? Well, he actually brought this to me, but if Director, if you'd want to throw a few words in there. Oh, and also, yeah, Jeremiah's here as well. Yeah.
Madam Chairwoman, I happen to be a board member for Wyoming Pathways, so
Okay,
I'll be happy
perfect.
to stand in. This is certainly a topic that we're very interested in continuing to work with all of you. We've seen the legislation you brought this past year, school crosswalks, safe pathways to school. Kind of disappointed that that didn't, at least in part, make it across the finish line, or at least start to the finish line yesterday. So if you could continue to work this issue with us, we think there are a lot of communities that need this support, and a lot of children, frankly, that need support in getting to their schools safely. So thank you.
Excellent. Questions for Mr. Riemann on the crosswalks? Safe routes to school? Okay. How about Director? Go ahead. Anything?
Ditto.
Ditto. Okay. That's the kind of testimony we like to hear right there. Oh, go ahead.
Madam Chairwoman, while I'm here, there was another request from Senator Ellis that kind of pertained to myself and Director Nesvik as well, so I'll stick around if you want to bring that up.
Go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine is just a technical corrections. I think, as we, over the years, and we just saw this on the Senate side, you'll have in statute before July 1st, 1979, the agency shall develop rules. And so just fine tooth comb, go through the statutes, clean them up. I think we've had some good discussions on, in bill drafting this year of when we talk about public lands, are we talking about certain state lands, designated state lands, like just trying to put a finer point on a lot of that stuff. So nothing, this is not a sexy topic, but I like these kind of bills. So.
Either one of the directors want to comment on that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, I agree. It's not sexy at all.
Director?
Ditto.
I like how you guys think.
Madam Chairwoman, in all seriousness, I appreciate the bringing this forward, because there is some cleanup that I think we can all take another look. If nothing else, it forces me and all my staff to reread all the statutes and make sure that we're fully brushed up on everything, so.
Yeah, it's a lawyer thing, I hate to tell you, but, she says all the time she's a nerd, but somebody's got to read those, so if you and your director and either director get your staffs on board with that, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Madam
Director.
Chair, it is very helpful, and I didn't want to make light of it, but we're ready to jump in the middle of it. I did neglect to mention earlier, Director Westby talked about Gray Rocks as a state park, and certainly, right now, Game and Fish, and we have been for many years, we manage that area, but we're wildlife managers, and we manage and oversee boating, and we enforce boating. We are not campground managers. We're not very good at it, and we've worked really close with state parks to try to get this to a new point. We do believe they could do a heck of a lot better job of managing the camping and that kind of use, while we continue to manage the fishery and the boating. And so just wanted to make sure that you understood Game and Fish is fully behind that.
Great. Anything else? Any other questions? Great. Appreciate the testimony. Director Schober, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, or are you good with where we are? It seemed like there were two topics here for you, but
Madam Chairman,
back.
Diane Schober, Office of Tourism, thank you so much. The only other thing we had was just an agency update. And to add to that, I know last year the Joint Appropriations Committee, because of our new funding model, had asked about our discussions with this committee and some of our additional funding and the projects that we wanted to do. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I would assume that we would be up for an agency update, but you know what happens when we assume. So thank you very much.
Senator Ellis has a question for you.
Thank you. Diane, I didn't mean to leave you out of the statutory cleanup request. I don't know, though, if Department of Tourism, if your agency, the offer extends to you, but I haven't read your statutes as much.
Madam Chairman and Senator Ellis, our statutory language is about this long, so we're pretty clean, I think, but we'll take a look at it with you.
Okay. No other questions for any of the directors? Anybody in the public that would like to come up and testify on any of these topics? We're kind of running out of time, so if you can make it pretty quick, we would appreciate that. Welcome, introduce yourself.
Understood. Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me, members of the committee. My name is Millward Simpson. I am the chair of the Wyoming Humanities Council. We're a statewide nonprofit organization, and the work that we do is to support humanities projects and programs throughout the state and to use the humanities to build civic participation and strengthen our communities. We would like to, we know you have a lot of difficult choices and a number of worthy topics. We would respectfully ask you to give special consideration to a few of them. One of them being the State Museum expansion, level 1, level 2. I can tell you, having been involved in the agency for a number of years ago, that the State Museum is bursting at the seams. It's one of our only nationally accredited museums. It is the repository of Wyoming's precious and irreplaceable history, and it desperately needs some consideration for either expansion or a new building, and the Humanities Council would enthusiastically support that. The monuments and markers, this is one of the key ways that people coming to our state learn our story. And a lot of these monuments and markers are exposed to the harsh Wyoming elements. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. I think this is a very timely topic to come before your consideration, and the Humanities Council supports it enthusiastically as well. As we do the growth of the film industry, and you'll see in your topic description that humanities is expressly included in this consideration of production, finding ways to incentivize film production in Wyoming, which would be a tremendous boon for our workforce and for the creativity of our citizens, and we heartily support that one as well. And just two more, Madam Chair, the 250th commemoration of the signing of the Declaration of Independence is a very unique opportunity, not only to showcase our country's founding and history and the importance of that document, but I think it gives us an opportunity to talk about Wyoming and its history and its unique constitution as well. The Humanities Council is going to be planning a lot of events around the state. We would love an opportunity to find ways to leverage those efforts with other organizations and really try to make this something that showcases Wyoming in spectacular fashion. And the advantage is there are hundreds of partner organizations around the country involved, and I think it gives us some opportunities to leverage some resources. So thanks for your consideration. Most important to us is the arts and culture funding proposed interim topic that Director Westby brought before you. We agree with Mr. Schneider that it's a great time right now for us to think big about arts and culture, to really look at the very important economic impact and quality of life and opportunity that it brings to our communities. We would prefer a less prescriptive and more broad topic to give us an opportunity to really think broadly about this. But we very much support arts and cultural funding, would be excited and an opportunity to talk to you about what the Humanities Council is doing, the resources we can bring to the table, and the great partnerships that have great potential in this topic. So thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Simpson? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
your
you, Madam Chair,
testimony.
members of the-
Thanks for your time. Anyone else from the public that would like to testify on any of these interim committees or topics? No? Okay, committee, questions or additional topics that you might want to add? Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I apologize to my committee members for not submitting on time. I did lose track of time a little bit, but kind of what I'm talking about, I know when we deal with bonus points, preference points, all that stuff, it's really contentious. Hunters are divided. I'm not interested in going there. Kind of the specific problem with a specific idea that I have is for our resident hunters, there are a lot of these limited quota areas, meaning these areas for specifically for deer and elk and antelope too, where they set the set amount of tags for folks who are residents. Because we have no preference point system, it's a strictly draw system, which generally I think is good. The problem is this, though, is that we get these situations, for example, Area 38 for elk up in the Bighorns. It's about a 18% draw odds for residents. The problem that occurs is you get folks who will say, well, my neighbor drew 2 out of 3 years, 2 out of 4 years, but I've been putting in for 7, 8, 9 years, haven't drawn a thing. And what I tell those folks is, well, we can't do a preference or a bonus point system because it's just, or I prefer not to for some of the reasons we've discussed. The one idea that I have been talking with some of the hunting associations, Rocky Mountain Elk, Bow Hunters of Wyoming, those folks, is if we do a non-participation folks who successfully draw that area. So the idea is we reduce the number of applicants in a pool, because if I draw that area now, I can turn right around the next year and apply. And there are folks who do draw those tags 2 years in a row. Versus if I draw that tag, regardless of if I harvest or not, I have to sit out for, say, 2 years, 3 years. So what that does is it reduces the amount of folks putting into the draw pool and increases the draws for the folks who are unsuccessful. So that's kind of the idea. I mean, I haven't run the hard numbers and thought it all the way to the end, but it's one that I've talked to some of those folks about, and they've been pretty receptive as some kind of middle ground between doing nothing and going the way of preference points or bonus points for those, for deer, elk, and antelope, for those limited quota areas for residents. So.
Other topics or other ideas or comments on that? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Burkhardt, Chairman.
Madam
Burkhardt.
Chairwoman, I'll just give Representative Western the bill that failed a few years ago that does what he wants.
Okay.
Please do.
Well, that makes it easy. Other, yeah, Senator Guru.
Just to comment, and God, since it just happened today, we better maybe brief our House colleagues. It's on, it's on here a bunch about governance issues for the parks and how they look at and that was a big component of what happened today with the Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. And what we went ahead and did is we passed the bill out. We passed the bill out with the $6 million, and there was no discussion about not moving that up to 50 million or more, some of the things that we had discussed. But what came out of it was that especially one of our members of our leadership team really did not want to see the bill go forward unless there was a real solid governance with regard to the money and with regard to how the parks work. And so what you'll see in another committee I serve on, Capital Finance and Investment, one of their first topics is going to be a structure that'll be a lot like the structure that you see for the other trust accounts or water accounts, where kind of comes to an omnibus bill of projects that would come forward that either this group or another group of legislators would be able to take a look at and then come to the body, or the model like the large project funding account for natural resource trusts that kind of goes through a similar process. So that would work out. So I guess what I'd ask just for the chairman to, when you're going through that, is maybe take some of these governance issues and put them on a little later. And then we'll ask that CATFin do their part earlier so that we'll be able to see the first half of the loaf, the governance part on the financial end of it, and then we can build in whatever else we need to build in. And I think the leadership on our side, wanted to see this come forward, but wanted to see it go forward that way. It wasn't and I know people, when you look at it, went from 12 pages to, 2.5, that we gutted the bill. And we did, but it wasn't gutting it. It wasn't gutting it for gutting its sake. It was gutting it to build back something that they think will be a better product and get back to where we wanted to get to in the end. And there was a definite desire to have this board not be cut out of that loop. I know a lot of us are new, but to be right back in the middle of that and be able to put back all the things that we thought were fairly important, and with new members, some new ideas. So I just wanted to kind of just throw that out there. Thanks.
Anything else, Co-Chairman? Anything that you'd like to add, or? No?
We're good, so
Okay.
maybe
Yeah,
reiterate.
maybe basically just get your homework in, the sooner the better. Tomorrow would be great. House members, get yours to Representative Newsom. Senate members, get your priorities to me. The two of us will meet together and we'll start coming up with a, yes. Yeah. So anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate it. And we'll see you this summer, this spring, actually. This meeting's adjourned.